to Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. And of course, in the rain, in the thunder, perhaps a fitting send-off, a fitting goodbye to a woman whose legacy is certainly going to be remembered for a long time in South Africa as the history books are rewritten. And there you can see the mourners in the rain, continuing to pay their respects. They continue to stand there in the rain as they bid farewell to the fallen spear, to the stalwart. And it really raises a number of questions around how we choose to remember those who participated in the struggle, what we choose to believe about them, how we come to believe what we believe. The president, of course, at pains to say that Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela had really bound up the wounds of the nation. And there it is, the picture of her casket leaving the stadium as, of course, proceedings make their way towards the Fourways Memorial Park. Let's just take a moment to take that in the rain. She's leaving Orlando Stadium, being taken by the military. And it's a fitting goodbye because, of course, she was a military commander herself, in a sense, as a high-ranking Umkhonto Wesizwe leader. Many MK vets will have served under her, will have been deployed by her, will have been on missions with her, being sent by her. And again, in the stadium, people are not moved by the elements. They continue to stand stoically as they bid farewell to the mother of the nation. The mood is still one of celebration. The mood is still one of singing, as you can see. The crowds are not being deterred by the elements, and it's a fitting goodbye to a woman who stood by her people in their darkest hours, who was there alone as the lone voice, making sure that the memory of the struggle, the memory of the name Mandela would not be lost in the darkest hours. We saw, of course, a number of speakers earlier in the program, from the leader of the economic freedom fighters, who gave a fiery address. But of course, responses to that speech, and fashion model Naomi Campbell and her Gucci tears, some on Twitter have been saying, because she also gave a moving tribute about getting to know Mama Madikizela Mandela. We saw dignitaries, presidents from around the continent, delegations from leading liberation movements from around the continent, people who are partners with the African National Congress in the struggle. But we also, I suppose, watched some of the most moving moments from today with her daughter, the ambassador Zenani Mandela Dlamini, challenging the narrative around her mother's memory and what has been said about her. That it was an act of extreme cruelty, that the truth about her mother only came out after she died. Naomi Campbell saying that the eyes and ears of the world, that is how the world experienced what was going on, because she was the eyes and ears of the world during those dark days. That she'd made personal sacrifices and stood tall. And that, I think, is what we are seeing even at this hour. Mama Winnie Mandela will be laid to rest at the Fourways Memorial Park Cemetery next to her great-granddaughter. We'll continue our coverage. We'll continue, of course, bringing you visuals and images. And there is that procession as it leaves the stadium. A rainy afternoon. And of course, I'm joined here in the studio by political analyst, Professor Somadota Fikeni. You've watched proceedings throughout the morning. You've stayed in the studio. You've heard the speeches. You've heard the responses. What are your reflections? Because, of course, as you heard there with Nikiwe and Noxolo Grootboom saying that this is not just the funeral of an icon, a stalwart, but it's very much a political funeral.
Without any doubt, when you see this funeral and the tributes that have been taking place in the last few days, it shows how complex our history is, and it shows how complex understanding Winnie Madikizela Mandela and the context and the social history that produced him her is. In essence, this was a space of the contestation of narratives of what we remember of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. But also, it was a space where the president of the country seemed to, even at the last moment, recognize the need for reconciliation and healing in this particular space.
Damaged by our past, numbed by our present, and hesitant towards our future. Those were part of his acknowledgements, really not getting away from the hard words that had been said by Ambassador Zenani Mandela Dlamini and, of course, the leader of the EFF. And I said to you as we watched the proceedings that nothing short of contrition by ANC leaders would really rise to this moment and respond appropriately. Nothing short of contrition. And the president, in his own way, delivered that, did he not?
I do think that he closed it very well by admitting that during the time she was experiencing these challenges, the organization was not always there. And go on to say there is a need now to actually honor her, even though it's a belated honor. That particular admission, and also to say he's going to go to Marikana with Julius Malema because that's what Mama Winnie Mandela had wanted to see. All those are signs of magnanimity, are signs of accepting responsibility, because had he used that space to rebut what Malema was saying, to respond to what the daughter was saying in a defensive manner, it would have actually diminished him. And that is the lesson that most political leaders do not understand, that when you have made a mistake, it's a sign of strength to say there are weaknesses. But if you continue to defend, it's a sign of weakness.
It really was a moment for the president to show his statesmanship. And of course, we continue to see visuals of the cortege leaving the stadium with the hearse right at the front. There's the presidential motorcade there on the right of the screen. The weather slowing down proceedings, and it's a dignified exit for Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela out of Orlando Stadium as she's to be taken to a final resting place at that Fourways Memorial Park. And that really is, in a way, the theme of what we heard today. Yes, there were rousing speeches. Yes, there were challenges, but altogether a dignified send-off. And I think it's almost a reflection, almost a metaphor, really, of who she was, because she was the sum of all these different parts. And we saw all of those reflected today. We saw fire, we saw gusto, we saw moments of statesmanship, we saw moments of conciliation, we saw moments of contrition, but most importantly, we saw moments of raw honesty.
In fact, that is what I always say, that South Africa would be able to hold its difficult conversations if it had some degree of honesty. Because in our public engagements, we suffer honesty deficit, we suffer courage deficit. Therefore, we always have the dual mentality of saying something but believing something.
But I also want to come to you to the speech that was made by his eldest daughter with with Nelson Mandela's eldest daughter with Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. It was a masterful speech because she had to walk the fine line of being able to express what her mother had felt, what her mother had thought in terms of how she had been dishonored, I suppose, but at the same time be careful not to denigrate the memory of her father. And she addressed this issue that it wasn't a case of competing narratives. It wasn't a case of swinging from one extreme to the other. Do we say Nelson Mandela is the saint, or do we swing to Winnie Madikizela Mandela and say, actually, she's the saint? She said, these were my parents. I was torn between the two, but raising the profile of the one didn't necessarily mean we should denigrate the other.
In fact, I do think that was the genius of her delivery, because in essence, that is the daily dilemma the children of Nelson and Winnie Mandela had to go through as we had these contesting narratives where some were being raised, trying to raise Nelson Mandela at the expense of Winnie, or others raising Winnie at the expense of Nelson Mandela. In essence, the two were giants in their own right. You didn't have to reduce one for one to rise.
She said they complemented each other. They were not competing against each other. They complemented each other, I suppose, in their roles as parents, but also in terms of their contribution to the struggle. She spoke about how it's very rare for any generation to have leaders of the stature of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, but to have had both and then to have been able to claim them as parents was quite an extraordinary reflection, was it not?
Actually, I would like to extend that to our partisan political space to say we've degenerated into a zero-sum game where one party believes that for me to leave, I have to cannibalize all others. And in that, we've lost any sense of national interest where we say we have this shared destiny, we have these common values, but we may approach them differently. So that thing of complementing each other in the life of Winnie and Nelson is a metaphor which is bigger than these two individuals.
So let's talk then about the genius of Julius Malema. You may disagree with his politics, but I would dare say that there's not any other South African politician, certainly not at this time, whose awareness of the moment, whose awareness of the psychology of any audience before him that can match that of Julius Malema. And today was vintage Julius Malema, was it not?
Without any doubt, at a level of rhetorical gesture and delivery and effectiveness of reading the mood and the moment. At this particular moment, Julius Malema is a force to reckon with. You may agree with him, you may agree with his style of politics or his ideology, but you just can't ignore him because he finds the moment and he exploits the moment to his advantage in the most effective manner. And it looks like for now, for once, we do have a president who doesn't go blow by blow with him, but rather rise at a different level to respond to him directly, acknowledge him, but simply present a different solution.
But he had some hard truths to say to those who were present, who said that, some who are now crying the loudest were the ones who rejected Winnie Madikizela Mandela. And it's a theme that he's come back to over and over in the last 12 days or so. And of course, I think the genius phrase was that when he quoted the Bible and said that Winnie Madikizela Mandela was the stone that the builders had rejected. And that's sort of a theme he came back to today and said those who are crying the loudest were the very ones who ostracized her, who rejected her, who thwarted her efforts.
I do think that a Julius Malema is that kind of a raw truth that is presented no matter what in a society without any sugarcoating, without any psychology around it. What you do with that truth is left to you to deal with that. So that element with Julius Malema, whether he talks socio-economic transformation or many other things, is always a very important role in a society. How the society manages that in a mature manner is very important as well. But he raised those issues which are very uncomfortable, which many politicians would not be able to raise. And therefore, that's the reason why he's able to generate debate around the issues he's raising.
I suppose one of the things that will be debated in the coming days and in the coming months is who steps into the vacuum that will have been left by Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, this person who had become the statesman who could bring all of these differing sides together. The president acknowledging that at the 80th birthday, they were all there. He was there. Julius Malema was there. This person who constantly fought for Julius Malema and the EFF to return back within the ANC fold. Who's going to step into that vacuum that, of course, as many struggle stalwarts, as they depart, fewer and fewer of them will have that moral authority to be a unifier, to be a peace broker, like Winnie Madikizela was in the end.
It's always very difficult for any society to get such iconic leaders within a generation or two, or even more than that. So what we can hope for now is a collective of leaders who recognize what they should do together, rather than even try to emulate the likes of Nelson Mandela or Winnie Mandela or Tambo. The least we can do is to keep their legacy and to keep the flame burning.
All right, so well, we've had, an absolutely moving send-off to Mama Madikizela Mandela. As you can see there in the rain, many of the crowds still braving the elements. And in an African sense, at least, it is fitting that perhaps as a struggle icon of her stature is sent off in this way. You'll remember, of course, 5 years ago, we had similar weather patterns when we were sending off Dr. Nelson Mandela. And similarly here, we are seeing the rain, but we are seeing the enthusiasm of the crowds. And, of course, that dignified procession by the military, sending her off as a leader in her own right, seeing the contribution that she made, particularly when it came to the strategies around fighting the apartheid regime. We're going to cross back now to Soweto for some more coverage from Orlando Stadium.
Thank you so much, Bongani, as the heavens continue to weep for Umama over Orlando Stadium. We're now seeing pictures of the military ceremony part of this funeral, led by the Chaplain General earlier on, Brigadier General Monwabisi Jamangile, calling all the pallbearers. Now, just to tell you a little bit more about what this service entails and this procession entails, the forces on the ground were told comprise of elements from the South African Navy, the South African Air Force, as well as the South African Military Health Service. They also include the National Ceremonial Band and a section of the National Ceremonial Guard. Now, what we saw earlier, Sisnopolo, of the casket being placed on the gun carriage, it's one of the highest tributes that the military can pay to one of its own, to one of its fallen soldiers. So we're seeing the part of this democratic government, which falls under the South African National Defence Force, claiming Umama as one of their own.
Ukanti ke ngoku mawethu into masiyenze makhe siye e-studio, zininzi ingxelo eziqulunqiweyo ngobomi bakhe umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. Kwezinye ingxelo ufumanisa into yokokubana kuthetha yena uqobo. Makhe siye e-studio khe sifumanisa into yokokuba yintoni abasiphathele yona.
Well, thank you very much, Noxolo Grootboom, there from Orlando Stadium. I guess the question that she raises there, Prof, is this idea of the narratives around the life of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela and the corrections that now have to be made as we rewrite history. And ultimately, you will know this, no single story can be the dominant narrative for long when you're dealing with a complex personality such as the stalwart we are laying to rest today.
Without any doubt, Winnie was a very complex person, but one thing, being a woman, no one would have believed the role she played in the underground, in the Mkondo Esizwe, because we always have this warrior image of a man. Even though in our history we have seen the likes of Mandantis, we have seen the likes of Queen Zinga, we have seen the likes of Queen of Sheba, we have seen the likes of Mkabai and many others like Nonesi, we still resist accepting the fact that women have always provided leadership roles at the most decisive moments, even in the battles. But the figures we provide are the likes of Shaka, the likes of Moshweshwe, without giving due acknowledgement to the role of women.
Well, some specific proposals coming today, the idea of naming Cape Town International Airport after her, the idea that, of course, as the president committed to, she will be conferred the honor of Isthalandwe by the African National Congress, the highest honor the organization can bestow on any comrade. But also just, I mean, there are revolutionaries around the world who've made questionable decisions, shall we say, and yet we see T-shirts emblazoned, across people's chests with their images. there should be statues, there should be monuments, there should be memorials to this name, Winnie Madikizela Mandela.
I think the biggest memorial we can have is to examine the values that we now live and try to fulfill the struggle, because that's the biggest monument than just erecting one monument. The Cape Town International Airport being named after Winnie, I think it was a masterstroke in a very subtle battle between the DA and EFF by suggesting that an airport in a DA area should be named after Winnie Madikizela Mandela when the sentiments are still very high. It puts the DA in the most awkward position of saying no when you know that you are going for elections.
With a mayor who might want to make it happen.
And the mayor who may just say, before my send-off, I think it's a good idea. And then it puts DA in the most awkward position to say, you are this side of the liberation struggle, the rest are the other side.
But let's come back to this theme of how women's roles are discussed, how they are viewed when it comes to this type of contribution in a struggle such as we had in South Africa. The point that was made by her eldest daughter was that, you know, was she held to a different standard because she was a woman? That's a truth we need to deal with.
Oh, certainly, without any doubt, women are held to a different standard because you have a patriarchal society. And we have had men running the IEC. When Dr. Brigalia Bam comes with Togo Mpumlwana, and, you know, they were women who took the IEC into levels not seen before, recognized globally. Do you still remember who was the public protector before Thuli Madonsela? She comes and take it higher. While still on that one, that's why even in our discussion of the likes of Thuli Madonsela, we need to be very careful to vilify women because of the political moment, because history may justify them.
Of course, we continue to watch visuals from Orlando Stadium. I do think we are seeing that the casket now being about to be loaded. In fact, I think it is about to be loaded as the procession is going to make its way to Fourways Memorial Park. We'll continue, of course, to bring you more analysis and more discussion of events as they proceed. We're now going to go back to Soweto, to Orlando Stadium, to have Nikiwe Pikicha and, of course, Nokolo Grootboom pick up some of the discussion.
Mhlawumbi ke Niki kungakuhle uba singabakhumbuza abaphulaphuli emakhaya nababukeli into kokuba njengokuba ngoku lo mkhozo wemoto uhamba usiya eFourways Memorial Park akuyi wonke phaya inkonzo ezawulungiselelwa nje usapho nabantu abathile usapho lusenzile isicelo sokubana singabi imikhozo Nkosi yami siyotshona eFourways kuba phaya eFourways kuzawungena nje kuphela usapho nabantu abakhethekileyo. Abantu ke babhalile Niki kwezinto zenu wethu thina sizazi ezo zinto ezalamaxesheni kodwa ke babhalile besithi bayacela into kokuba zeke kuthi naphaya kwelacala laseFourways abantu benze imikhozo endleleni ithi xa zifika izithuthi zakhe umama uWinnie afike ephahliwe ezindleleni bemamkela ukuyofika.
It's a very important reminder that the funeral cortege now about to make its way to the Fourways Memorial Park where Umama will be buried. This is now a family memorial site because, as we know, her great-granddaughter who died in 2010 is also buried there, something which shattered Umama Winnie. She was very young and died in an accident in the run-up to the 2010 Soccer World Cup. A very poignant moment for the family as they return to this burial site now today. So the public is reminded, though, not to make their way to Fourways. We are allowing the family their space and dignitaries for the final burial process that is going to take place there. You've been hearing enough from us, and we're showing you all these pictures, giving you rolling and live coverage now of this funeral cortege as it makes its way. But let's hear a bit from Umama herself.
I am so proud of being me. I walk tall even in the darkest of places because I am determined by my culture. I am who I am because I am black. I own this continent. It is mine. I walk tall in it.
Winifred Nomzamo Zanyiwe Madikizela Mandela was born in Bizana in the Eastern Cape, Emampondweni, in 1936.
I grew up making dolls with mud, and I think this is what shaped people like myself. I used to wake up at 4 o'clock, go and fetch water from the river, and take the cattle to the cattle field. The goats and the sheep, and then run back home, wash quickly, use Vaseline all over my body, go to school. We had to learn to put the bucket under a cloth you made, what do you call it?
Which almost looked like a crown.
So somewhat of a knot. To sit the bucket on your head, and you were told by your aunties that you mustn't hold that bucket with your hands.
Yes.
And you would walk half a kilometer with that bucket on your head straight.
Wow.
Yeah, and that is what happened.
In 1955, the industrious and resilient Nomzamo, she who tries, as her name suggests, became the first black social worker in South Africa. It was also around this time that she met Nelson Mandela.
I was a young bride then, and I had never really lived as a married family woman with a normal life. So my life was always determined by the political situation of the time. I led a day-to-day existence which was determined by the security branch of the day. I never knew what I was going to wake up to.
3 months after her marriage to Mandela, she underwent her first detention for playing a role in the anti-pass campaign. In 1959, she gave birth to her first child, Zenani.
I never had that opportunity of saying to myself, today I'll take my children to school, I will perform the normal wifely duties. There never was such a time. From the onset, I need to point out that I was the most unmarried married woman. Even though I was supposed to be married, have a family, I've never really known what it is to have a married family life, a normal life, with a normal nucleus of a family where there's a father, a mother, and children waking up and having breakfast together, and then you hold your children by their little arms and you take them to school. I've never seen any of my children on their first day at school. I was banned and prohibited from entering educational institutions, so I relied a great deal on friends to do the sorts of normal things a mother does.
At the end of the Rivonia trial, on the 12th of June 1964, the accused Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Ahmed Kathrada, Govan Mbeki, Raymond Mhlaba, Elias Motsoaledi, and Andrew Mlangeni was sentenced to life imprisonment in Robben Island after they were found guilty of treason. Winnie was slapped with a banning order that restricted her movement to Johannesburg.
We are virtually in prison, even in our country. Those who are outside prison walls are simply in a bigger prison because the black man is virtually a prisoner, and all those other fellow whites and other groups that are as oppressed as we are all really in prison, in a bigger apartheid prison.
In May of 1969, Winnie was arrested and kept in solitary confinement at the Pretoria Central Prison for 17 months. For the first 200 days, she had no contact with anyone aside from her interrogators.
If I did not believe, if I was not a Christian, I don't think I would have survived that period of my life. The 18 months in solitary confinement was the third worst aspect of my life that was very difficult to live with, and it left scars nothing can heal. I was detained at the Central Prison, the female section. The day they came to get me, as they always did, that one was the most painful of all the imprisonment I had suffered. The children were tugging on my skirt, crying, "Mommy, don't go, Mommy, don't go." And the police were so ruthless. There must have been about 30 to 40 police who came to arrest me. This was at 3 a.m. in the morning. And the usual thing was you heard bangs all over the doors. They were kicking the doors. They kicked in the windows. And that noise alone still lives with me to this day. And the degree of anger with which one was arrested was beyond belief. On the first day of my interrogation, you are sitting alone on the chair. You are with these interrogating officers. There were about 10 of them in my case. Some behind, others in front, on the sides. Firstly, the first week in prison, you can't swallow. It becomes difficult to even swallow a glass of water. You just develop this bitterness in your mouth, and you lose your person. You just become an object that belongs to them. So when they took me to the cell for interrogation to the police headquarters, and they started interrogation. I was interrogated for 7 days and 7 nights, non-stop, not what they subsequently did later on when they would take a detainee back to the cells and bring the detainee back. I was interrogated continuously for 7 days and 7 nights, and what was relieving at the time, the body has a way of dealing with extreme pain. I welcomed the moments when I fainted. The body took care of itself. When I couldn't take it anymore, after being tortured, like all of them, like all other detainees, I was tortured too, and I was urinating blood, and I couldn't even lift up my legs at the end of interrogation because you get so swollen from lack of sleep and non-sleeping for 7 days and 7 nights that I don't think there was anything that would be more cruel. So whatever happened thereafter, you sort of get numbed with pain.
The mid-70s would see Winnie being banished to Brandford in the Free State for 8 years.
The banishment to Brandford, the separation with my children, and what the security branch did almost every time my children were coming back from boarding school. By the way, I had to place them in boarding schools at a very early age because of the problem of spending a lot of time in prison. I was arrested, I was in and out of prison almost every month, if not every week. And the consequence of that was the children were always left alone. So I had to farm them out to boarding schools at an extremely tender age. They were ironically in a school called Our Lady of Sorrows in Swaziland. I had to find them a place there. When they were not at Our Lady of Sorrows, my white mother, Helen Joseph, used to take the children whenever I got arrested and they were back from school and they found me in prison. So those were perhaps the cruelest moments which have left an indelible mark in my heart. That is still a very sore point to this day. I had no opportunity to see them growing up. I had no opportunity to help them with their homework and see to how they were performing in school like an ordinary family.
Lo ke nguFelicia Mabuza Saddle simcaphula kushicilelo akhe wabanalo nomama wethu umama uWinnie Mandela esimbekayo namhlanje. Ndithanda ke uba sikhumbule into kokuba le nkqubo yethu yanamhlanje bizisigaba ezintathu. Ekseni siqale ekhaya apho beqhutywa khona inkonzo yekhaya nalapho abekhaya bebebona umzimba okugqibela. Okwesibini sazofika apha kulamabala sikuwo amabala ase-Orlando nalapho inkqubo yezithethi ibiqhubeka khona. Ngoku isigaba sokugqibela kulapho umtyangampo wemoto usingise khona kumadlaka ase-Fourways. Ulapho ke uChriselda Oshem oko ebadle pha intsasa yonke oko ephaya ngentsimbi yesine ekseni. Ndiyaqonda into yokokubana kubhetele ke sikujonge into yokokubana usemina kwawuthi kanti uhleli phansi.
Jabulela sis Noxolo no Sisnikiwe. Well, after 2 weeks of mourning and messages detailing the life and times of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, this will be her final resting place here at the Fourways Memorial Park. This is where we will finally get to say goodbye to Umama Wesizwe, Iqala Lomsabalazo Well, as you pointed out, Sis Noxolo, a few moments ago, that it is not everyone who will be allowed here at the Fourways Memorial Park, and it is just the very close family as well as the high-profile dignitaries who will be coming to say their last goodbyes here at the Fourways Memorial Park. And the rest of the mourners, as we saw throughout this morning into this afternoon, thousands of South Africans, some coming from the different provinces, all making their way to Orlando Stadium to say their final goodbyes. Now, lo mama wasithetha ngayo sis Noxolo kunye nawe sis Nikiwe, umama who earned the name of the mother of the nation ngenxa yendima that she played during the apartheid area, so fiercely fighting against an oppressive regime. And certainly some would say today, after decades of being vilified, being arrested, of being banished, as well as being humiliated, kungona ke umama wesizwe, umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, will finally get to rest. Well, this is where Mama Winnie Madikizela will obviously be finally laid to rest. And here at this particular memorial park, at the Mandela burial estate is where she will lie. And you must recall, I heard Sis Nikiwe also mention it a bit earlier on, is that this is where she will lie next to two of her great-grandchildren, uZenani no Zenawe. You'd recall in 2010, Zenani had died in a car crash. That was during the FIFA World Cup. And you had Zenawe, who had died, was born prematurely and then died just a few days after death. So this is definitely a place where the Mandela family will remember Mam Winnie and some of those within this great family who will also be laid here next to her. But certainly Mama Winnie will be sent off with some of the most important and highest military honors. And let's chat now to Colonel Nzundeni Tenga, who joins us now, who will give us some detail into what happens during an official funeral like Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, a special official funeral. Colonel, thank you very much for your time. You are certainly a senior staff officer within the South African National Defence Force ceremonial. What goes into sending off an icon of this nature?
Oh yes, Creselda, you will understand that Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela has been awarded a special official funeral category 1, as my colleague has already indicated at Orlando Stadium. This category is being given to members of extraordinary credentials. Therefore, immediately when they leave the stadium, they will proceed, the whole procession will proceed to the four-way cemetery, when they get to the gate, they will then stop because the coffin that time will be in the hearse. Now, when they get to the gate, the bearers and pallbearers will remove the coffin from the hearse. That is after the escort has formed up inside the gate, 100 meters away from the gate, followed by the leading detachment, which will be the members from the National Ceremonial Guard in green uniform, and thereafter followed by the combined band. I call it combined band because it is inclusive of the National Ceremonial Guard band and the Army band Durban. Immediately behind them, it will be a gun carriage, and bearers and pallbearers will be totally behind them. Removing the coffin from the hearse, they will then put it on the gun carriage, assisted by the gun carriage ordnance. Immediately after that, the whole military procession will then take place through taking the coffin through to the cemetery itself, passing the whole escort that is formed up of the 4 companies representing the 4 arms of services. Immediately when the gun carriage reaches the red carpet, yes, they will get command halt, and the bearers and pallbearers will then remove the coffin out of the gun carriage. Yes. The bearers will take the coffin into the cemetery. They will place the coffin on the cemetery, wherein they will fall in together with the pallbearers.
And then, Colonel Nzundeni, straight after that, you would have the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, who will then remove the flag from the coffin, and that will then be handed to the Chief of the Defence Force.
Okay, Criselda, it will happen in this fashion. Immediately when the bearers place the coffin on the cemetery, and the bearers and pallbearers has formed up around the cemetery, then the storm flag, we call it a storm flag. That storm flag will be removed by a sergeant major in control. He will then hand it over to the marshalling officer. The marshalling officer will hand the storm flag to the commander, to the chief of the South African National Defence Force, yes, by this time, which is General Soli Shoke. Now, General Soli Shoke will then hand the storm flag over to the President of the Republic of South Africa, and the President will then hand the storm flag to the family.
All right. Thank you very much for all that insight there, Colonel Nsundendi Tenga, who's just given some insight into the important military honors that Mama Winnie will be laid to rest by. Just before we hand over back to you in Orlando Stadium, I must just point out that just outside the cemetery as well, there are scores of people who are lining the street waiting for the procession to arrive here at the Fourways Memorial Park, and everyone wanting to get a glimpse and to say their final goodbye to Umama Wesizwe.
Masibambe ngazibini ke ku Criselda sithembe into kokubana kwalapha exesheni sizawuphinda kwakhona sibuyele kuye asithathe kwakhona ayokusibeka apho asibeka khona. Nikki.
It has been a very long and emotionally demanding day. I think we saw all sorts of elements reflected of Umama's life. We saw the deeply political person that she was in some of the fiery speeches which were shared by some people like the EFF leader Julius Malema. We also heard such poignant messages from her family, Ambassador Zenani Mandela Dlamini, also delivering a beautiful tribute to her mother, but also laced with anger at how the mother had been treated. The presiding Methodist Bishop of Southern Africa, Bishop Ziwa, setting off us beautifully that wonderful sermon and the word today that even in death she speaks. She would not be silenced. Let's, as we now regurgitate and reflect on and try and percolate everything that's happened, let's get some reflections from some of the senior ANC leaders who were here. We're joined now by party spokesperson as we await that final graveside procession. Bulemabe speaks for the ANC. Afternoon, sir, and thank you so much for chatting to us.
Afternoon, and afternoon to your viewers.
A very difficult day emotionally, but certainly quite taxing and thought-provoking. Your thoughts on some of the criticisms which were directed not only by the EFF leader but also by Ambassador Zenani Mandela as well?
Well, you will know that at the beginning of all of this, especially when the ANC received the news of the passing on of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, it rolled out its sleeves and set out to make sure that she gets a dignified funeral. I'm sure that given the country that we are in, where people are allowed to express their own views, what is important is that the might of the ANC came to the stadia in numbers across the country to make sure that we could be able to have a dignified send-off. There was no booing of anyone. The leader of the Reds was allowed to speak his own mind. Members of the family had also conveyed their own views. The president of the ANC, who's also the president of the Republic, speaking on all our behalf, conveyed what is the message of the people of South Africa and also conveyed the message of the ANC. Significantly, he mentioned that what the ANC will henceforth do, something that he will be pursuing within our structures, is to confer posthumously on Mama Winnie the honors of Istalandwe Siaparangwe.
But given what we know of her immense contribution,
yes,
given what we've always known, did it have to reach this point for her to be honored as such?
Well, you would also appreciate that after our 54th National Conference, one of the things that we did was we began with the revolutionary pilgrimage, which saw the leadership of the ANC under the leadership of the president and all the officials visiting, amongst others, Mama Winnie herself. They had visited her house, just when they started with the program. We also saw them there to also get her own well wishes. And she had expressed her own hope. I mean, we've got it on tape. She had expressed her own hope and believed that the agenda of renewal that this leadership has set out to pursue is one that should be able to bring everyone in the ANC together. But what was also more touching was that during the registration weekend, the president of the ANC again had gone to pick her up, went with her to check her details and all of that. So she would have joined millions South Africans in 2019 to cast a vote and cast it for the ANC. Now that was quite significant because at least we all had an opportunity to see those things. And I'm told that even as they went to Jabulani Mall, she still insisted on going with them and sat there by, I think, was it Nando's, sat there by Nando's with them because she couldn't walk that distance. But she was still there, and they wanted the masses of our people to see her around the leadership of the ANC. I think it is this positive, her own desire to contribute to the renewal project of the ANC that we who remain in the movement should take further forward.
Masibuyele Tatmabe kulombandela athetha ngawo unikiwe umbandela wokuwongwa.
Yes.
Knowing what you know now, would you have done it differently?
Well, you see, the African National Congress has got a way of rising to occasions, regardless of the challenges that it has got to be seen resolving. What I can assure you of is that ours is not a populist movement. Ours is a movement that has carried itself through appreciation of the right values, principles, and all of that. And you have seen part of the things that we've been doing throughout the 10 days was to make sure that we honor her legacy. I mean, the fact that one of the things we did was you also saw Stompisi Bay's mom visiting her house. I mean, we were with Sis Sophie Mokwena at the house and ultimately coming and ultimately making sure that she also participated in this thing because she had said it in her own words that she has never casted any doubt or believed any wrongdoing on the side of Mama. So everyone else was here. Our members of the ANC who occupied over 90% of the stadium conveyed their respect to Mama Winnie in a dignified and most respectful manner. I think that is what we should be doing, is that what are we going to do to make sure that the life of Mama Winnie resembles courage from amongst the young men and women who are remaining, who must be taught to understand what it takes to preserve and protect the National Liberation Project.
To be fair, though, Mr. Mabe, I agree with you. It's certainly been a wonderful and very dignified send-off. Yes. And as you rightly point out, there have been a number of events over the past 12 days to rightfully honor the kind of leader that she was and served this nation. But there is this Brandford debacle, something which is so glaringly obvious about something which was not done properly to honor Umama. Yes. Secondly, I think there was something of a critique in the address given by Umama's daughter, Uzanani, about the narratives and the ways in which women who fought in the liberation struggle are documented or not, or erased. How do we begin to change that and in meaningful ways now so that we truly honor her legacy and that of others today?
Well, one of the things that we had begun doing in the ANC is that on Thursday, as you saw, we launched the Winnie Mandela Day of Service. It might have been symbolically launched through a food garden, which we had themed as the Winnie Mandela Food Garden. But significantly, that kind of an initiative links up with our own resolution on food security and land reform. If you like, it actually begins to speak to the overarching agenda on the expropriation of land. That if we are to begin expropriating land, what is it that we want our people to use this land for? We have now said a themed food garden named after Winnie Mandela, where we encouraged our people that they must have these food gardens in their homes, in their schools, community centers, and all of that to honor. This begins to make sure that she is part of the lifelong program that the ANC will have to drive forward.
Sure.
Now, this is very important to celebrate her legacy, one, two, to contribute towards sustainable development using an icon as a feature towards that. And we're expecting that, I mean, if, for instance, if you take an example, if you had something like that in schools, it could also be part of beginning to make sure that her own history becomes part of our own liberation heritage. Because you need younger ones who are coming to understand that it was not just men, it was men and women who were in the front line of fighting for freedom. As it relates to the project that you are talking to, which is the Brantford project, I think we must all be comforted by the statement issued by the ANC leadership in the province of the Free State, to the extent that work is going to begin in earnest to make sure that whatever errors that could have happened are resolved. And I'm sure that institutions of government, both at the national level and at the provincial level, are beginning to make sure that they find one another. I think it is becoming much more urgent now because I mean, the history of Mama Winnie has touched lives. The fact that a simple tribute wall outside Lituli House could in less than 4 days have over 20,000 signatures. Even today, as we speak, there are still people who are taking taxis to town just to go and sign. I mean, we were doing it just as a symbolic thing.
Okay, so there would be those gardens as part of, you know, sustainable food development, etc., and naming that after her. But how about something far more bold, as the EFF leader suggested, perhaps renaming Cape Town Airport? It would be fitting and poetic justice, don't you think, for what, when we were growing up, it was called DF Malan Airport, I think, for it to now be called Winnie Madikizela Mandela Airport. What's your take?
I think that it is very important. You see, I'm smiling at this one because our organization must be given space to lead the strategic initiative. You see, it's very important. I mean, the ANC is the leader of society, and the ANC will, out of its own design and desire, make a determination of how it best celebrate or honors the legacy of Mama Winnie, whether it's through an airport, it's through schools. I mean, there are many settlements in this country that are already named after Mama Winnie. Some of those are informal, some of those are formal. But these are places of residence, I mean, where African people, blacks in particular, refer to as home. You know, these people are people that don't go to airports. They don't reach that transit points. When they direct you on where to find them, they say, no, utantola go Winnie Mandela squatter camp. Utantola go Winnie Mandela settlement. It might be important as well to begin looking at formalizing all those places where the African majority, blacks in particular, have decided to name them after this icon of our own struggle. You know, of course, I'm sure that our movement, and especially institutions that are portioned with that responsibility, wouldn't find it difficult to welcome progressive ideas, whether they come from opposition parties or from well within his ranks. The immediate task now is to carry forward what the president of the ANC has spoken. And I can tell you, I'm a member of the National Executive Committee, and my role as national spokesperson allows me to also sit in the working committee. I can tell you that I'm going to raise my hand, and I'm going to endorse that suggestion when it is made up, and I'm going to also work to pursue other National Executive Committee members that let us hit the call made by the president to confer on Mama Winnie posthumously the honors of Easterland Wesiaparango.
Winnie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon on this important occasion for the nation as we lay the mother of the nation to rest. Let's go back to our Johannesburg studio now, where Bongani is standing by.